Greetings and God bless. Welcome to another episode of Pass the Mic, Dynamic Voices for a Diverse Church, powered by The Witness, a Black Christian collective. I am your host, G. Tyler Burns. You can follow me on Instagram at G. Tyler Burns. Please follow at your own risk. And joining me, as always, is the founder of The Witness, very extensive bio, the man, the myth, the legend, the three-time best-selling author, Mr. Blue Check Verified himself. You can follow his writings at jemartisby.substack.com. Dr. Jemar Tisby, what's going on, brother?
I'm always honored to be in the presence of the newly anointed Bishop G. Tyler Burns. So, man,
you gotta stop, man.
What an honor!
You gotta stop.
How did that come about again? Like you just put it in your bio?
I don't know. It feels like it's a roadmap to ruin. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of which,
nice.
Jamar, tell people what you've been up to, man. Okay, so you're jemartisby.substack.com, and I have to tell you, there is no more relevant, important, crucial Substack to be subscribed to in this for such a time as this, as Jemar Tisby's Substack, which constantly gives tremendous value, private chats, all kinds of different things. I'm telling you, you gotta be subscribed to it. We joke about it, but I'm not just joking. It's phenomenal.
I appreciate that.
Hey, bro.
Really?
Hey, look, you add value to the people.
That's wild.
You add value to the people, man. I'll send you the invoice later.
The number 6 overall in the history category, thanks to you, my subscribers.
I'll send you the invoice later. Don't worry about that.
What I've been doing lately is a 4-part video series called Roadmap to Ruin: How the Church Can Resist the Dismantling of Democracy. Let me tell you how it came about. I was already thinking of something like this, but then it got confirmed by an elder in the faith. Shout out to Dr. David Emmanuel Goatley, president of Fuller Theological Seminary, first Black president of the seminary in the institution's history. We were collaborating on another project, and we were having dinner, him, his niece, who's also working on this project. And out of the blue, he brings up, you should do, I'm unloading my burden. Yeah. That it feels like the church isn't responding with the urgency that this free fall into fascism requires. And he's like, you should do a 4-part video series, call it The Roadmap to Ruin, and make sure you get Black pastors on board. And this was a spiritual thing. I wrestled with it.
Yeah.
I wrestled with it because A, I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
Just logistically, mechanically, all that. B, it was going to take a lot of time, energy, and effort. And I'm glad I didn't know then
what you know now.
Precisely how much work it would have been, because I'm not sure if I would have done it. But I took a step of faith, felt to me like a step of faith. And it just came together in a God kind of way. So I wrestled. When I finally decided to do it, I started reaching out to some videographers. Reached out to our videographer, Ryan Gentry. He's big time. He was too busy, couldn't do it. So I'm like, who's my plan B, C, and D? And then I reached out to a couple other folks, either didn't hear back or they weren't available. Then I threw a Hail Mary. And I called my colleague, Mary Kate. We've been working together 4+ years. Anything you see on social media that looks polished and professional, that's her. But she's also been helping with different courses and things of that nature that I've done in the past. So I reached out to her. I told her the whole situation. I said, it's time is of the essence because under this political regime, we have a matter of weeks and months, not years.
Right.
So I wanted the info to get out there ASAP. So I called her while I'm on another trip. I'm on a bus with 30 other people. I call her up out of just randomly. And within 2 hours, she had gotten us a videographer, a place, and a date.
That's amazing.
And I'm just like, okay, God, I guess we're doing this thing. And so it's called Roadmap to Ruin: How the Church Can Resist the Dismantling of Democracy. It's a 4-part series. The first part is Signs of Ruin. The second part is Architects of Ruin. The third part is Roadmap to White Christian Nationalism. And then the last part is Roadmap to Resistance. How
did it feel to put all this together? Did it feel like, seeing the clips, it seems like this is you in your element?
I'm glad you said that. It felt like that. It was exhilarating. It really was. So once I had a week to put everything together.
Wow.
I had to script it out, outline everything. What I was literally most nervous about, this is just so insider baseball, was reading my notes on camera.
Right.
I wanted to be able to look at the camera, but I couldn't memorize all this.
Right.
So
for sure.
And I wasn't in a pulpit where I could go back and glance or whatever, a podium where I'm used to speaking publicly. I'm sitting down at a table, and I didn't want to just be reading off of my notes while the camera's looking at me, because nobody wants to see that. That's boring. But I was able to, it looked okay, but that's the kind of stuff that goes through your head. But here's where it got real. And this is where I think it applies to everyone. The most frequent question I'm getting right now as I discuss faith and politics is, what can we do? People want to know, how can we resist all of this injustice? How can we contribute in a positive way?
Yes.
To uplifting democracy, because it feels so big, complicated, beyond us. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. But the passage I keep coming back to comes from 1 Corinthians. It's talking about the spiritual gifts. Now to each one, a gift has been given. And then I like the second part, for the common good.
Yes.
Which I interpret as public justice. So this was spiritual for me, because it's like, okay, Jamar, what are you gifted to do? Like, truly given by the Holy Spirit. The moment you said yes to Jesus, Jesus gave you the gift.
Yes.
I said, okay, well, I can teach. Well, how do you teach? Well, just different vehicles, different formats. Let me try this video thing. And this is what I'm saying to people right now who are asking the question, what do we do? What's your gift? What is your spiritual gift? Because it is given not for you to get rich and famous, not for you to get a big Instagram following, not for you to make a whole lot of money. Maybe all that stuff comes along, and I'm not knocking it, but it is given primarily for what? The common good.
My. When you think about this series, your heart is that churches would go through it together.
Yes.
Your heart is that it would be done in community. And talk about how important it is for it to be done in community, because often these questions are asked in isolation. And you're trying to push people towards the communal exploration and resistance together.
You talk a lot about pastoring. I've been a local church pastor on and off a couple of times. We also talked last episode about moving differently and how maybe a pastoral calling is not forever. Maybe it's a season. I feel like this right now, the sort of educational piece is my proxy of pastoring, right? So you talk about the communal aspect and how at Rise City, when you get people mobilized together doing something, that hits different.
Yes.
Same with education. So all of these videos are available for free on my new YouTube page. So youtube.com/@jtisby, youtube.com/@jtisby. You can download them for free. But what I also did was, throughout the month of April 2025, I led a live online study of the videos. And so it was a flipped classroom model where you watch the video beforehand. And then when we get together, I do a short, it usually kind of creeps out. I promise I'm not going to hold you for long. And then it becomes longer. Right. But I do a brief teaching that is not a replication, but an extension of the video. And then it's on Zoom. So we break into breakout rooms.
That's so good.
We've averaged 150 people each time.
That's incredible.
And then we come back together, sort of discuss a little bit. And I talk about the next week, what to look forward to. And you know what I found? What was so interesting is every class that we've had, people are asking the what do we do question, to which I say spiritual gifts, but also I probably don't have the answer. And there's not one single answer. It's all very contextual. And the thing I keep telling people, local, it comes back to what you can do right in front of you, right? All of those things. But here's what I've discerned. The reason people keep coming back is not because they get answers, it's because they get fellowship. So there is an interesting way that God works, to where
that's good.
We may not have all the answers, but we have each other. And in recognizing that we have each other, we can exist in the ambiguity.
Yeah.
We can exist in the state of, I don't quite know what to do, and I am not capable of stopping all of this bad stuff from happening, but at least I'm not alone. And I think that's really the value of these things.
And it seems like that the strategy isn't just to take away rights or freedoms or equity or diversity or inclusion, that part of the strategy of this particular moment in time is to divide, is to separate, is to isolate, is to pit people and groups against one another.
You've named the deep spiritual reality that we're facing, right? So I go back to Ephesians, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, and we wrestle not simply against politics.
Yes.
What we're wrestling against is the disintegration of community. Because what this regime is doing, I don't call it an administration. Because when you administer destruction, that's just a regime.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they're weakening the social bonds that keep people together. As divided as we are and have been, it's becoming harder to actually seek those bonds. What do I mean? Well, one of the things is turning neighbor on neighbor.
Yes.
Immigration, right?
Absolutely.
They want you to rat out and snitch on your neighbor. They're dissolving church ties, right? They don't want churches to be sanctuaries for immigrants. They don't want you to have that right, even as a matter of religious freedom. They are weakening economics. So now what happens when the economics get strained is it's every person for themselves.
Scarcity.
Scarcity. So fundamentally, yeah, we see how they're dismantling and destroying public goods and public services. But what that does, I think, on a spiritual level, is it dissolves the bonds, the human connections that we're supposed to have. And that is an evil and a spiritual battle as much as a political one.
When you think about this course, your hope for this course is that people would do it together, churches would do it together. You're getting tremendous traction on the study. You're moving forward and you're trying to map out, this is what it looks like. I'm going to give you the guide. I'm going to give you the field notes. I'm going to show you what it looks like. What do you feel like people should approach? How do you feel like they should approach this material? Because I think you're telling them up front, I don't have the answers. Don't have all the answers. But you are giving them a way to approach this moment. And I think you're really giving a call to arms. Hey, this is not normal. This isn't something, oh, okay, it's just gonna in 4 years or in 3 years or whenever. No, you have to mobilize right now.
100%. Yeah, by the way, I'm on Blue Sky, and my handle on Blue Sky is this is not business as usual. That's what I ultimately want the church to understand. This video series is so that you can be informed, go beyond the headlines, because there's we're a body, right? And not every part of the body does the same thing. So as a public scholar, as a researcher, I'm immersed in a lot of this stuff that's happening. A lot of the stuff that gets written about or posted about online. I'm reading the books, I'm listening to other scholars on it, because that's my job.
Right.
That's what I do. I recognize other people have day jobs, right? Like, and you may not know all of this. Yeah. And honestly, for a government that's functioning, you shouldn't have to look into every single action and policy. You should trust that the people who are representing you are representing your best interests, not in a way that says, just hands off, but in a way that you shouldn't have to feel like I need to be tuned in and researching every second of every day.
Yeah, just to survive.
Just to survive. That's a sign of a dysfunctional government, right? So, but we're in that stage, and nevertheless, life goes on, right? We're seeing people who are still to this day in an El Salvadoran torture prison. And yet we have to drop the kids off of school.
Man.
And yet we have to buy these expensive eggs, which the price still hasn't come down on.
Thought that was going to be the first thing.
That's why they voted for him, right? That's what they told us.
That's what they said.
So my point is, I wanted to bridge the gap. I wanted to bridge the gap between scholars and researchers like me who are chin deep in this and people who are doing other things that are important and valuable. Particularly in the church. So how I want them to approach it is, part one, are we being alarmist? Are we making a bigger deal out of this? Is this just because you don't like Republicans? And part one is signs of ruin. I go through point by point this avalanche of dismaying news about democracy. And that's weeks ago, because we get daily updates that are chilling.
Did you expect that it would be daily?
Yes. That was
I
part of
did
my
too.
frustration.
I did too, but I feel like I didn't really reckon with what that would look like.
Nobody could.
Because it feels like there's no bottom.
Right. There isn't. I mean, the bottom is complete authoritarian control and a nation ruled by the mega rich and ultra wealthy, which is already happening. I mean, when you think about the open grifting that's happening, it's literally pay to play. If you donate to this club, if you buy these Bitcoins, or the cryptocurrency, if you donate to the campaign, you get an audience with politics. That's not how it should work.
Right.
And because it's this man, we don't think about how egregious that really is.
Right.
Because everything he does is egregious. So yes, we and this was part of the frustration or the burden that we feel as scholars, because I'm in all these different groups of folks who study this stuff. It's like we are waving every red flag after red flag and saying that the sequel is going to be worse than the original.
Yeah.
So the second administration, he told us in 900 plus pages with Project 2025, which, by the way, I actually believe him when he said he knew nothing about it, because he don't read. That man didn't read no 900-page document. He don't know nothing in there. He had people telling him, this is the plan. Here, we've drafted the executive orders. He signed dozens of them at noon on day one. And we knew that was going to happen because they laid it out. They've been strategizing.
They've been telling us
for years. And here we are. What is sort of breathtaking is that rapid pace.
Yeah.
So we've seen, this is not just a U.S. thing. There's a global descent into authoritarianism.
Absolutely.
The main players would be places like Russia and Hungary, but even it took years.
Yeah.
This is months, and within weeks, you could argue almost everything changed. So there's a lot more I could say about this, but what I hope is the church realizes we're not being alarmist.
Yeah.
Nor are we being partisan. Can I rant about this for a minute?
Okay, I want to save this rant, so I want to let you go. I want to let you go on this rant. Listen, we need to take a break. Say la, get your tea, and come right back. Okay, pause the video. Jamar about to go off. Okay, we'll be right back. Here, I'll pass the mic. Well, greetings and God bless, family. This is your host of Pastor Mike, Tyler Burns, and I am so excited that we're still doing Pastor Mike 11 years after we started. Think about this. 11 years after we started, we're still doing this. And the reason why we can do it is because people like you have supported us from the beginning. We would not still be here if not for the support of people who are our patrons. And if you go to patreon.com/PastorMike, if this podcast has helped you in any way, shape, or form, if we have encouraged you to think more deeply about race and justice, if we've inspired you to make change right where you are, if we've been an oasis in the desert in the midst of toxic church spaces, we need your help. We need your support. For just a few dollars every single month, you can keep us going. You literally, as our listeners, keep us going. So head to patreon.com/PastorMike. We're passing the mic to you for your support so that we can continue doing this podcast that so many people love. Thank you so much for your support. If you are already a patron, and if you're not, just a few dollars a month. Thank you so much. So Jamar, I stopped you just on the precipice, on the cliff of a major rant about partisanship in the context of church.
I'm chill now. I'm chill.
Nah, don't be chill. Don't chill.
I just want to, in a measured tone, say there's a difference between being partisan and being political. Okay. So one of my frustrations is so many pastors don't want to talk about this fascism that's happening right now. And that's not an overstatement to call it fascism. For sure. Because they don't want to appear political in the pulpit or political as a pastor in general. Well, I gotta shepherd the whole flock. Some people are different political persuasion. I get that. I do. And it is wise to be circumspect about it.
Absolutely.
But to be political means to be concerned about policy, and policy is about how we treat people. So by very nature, as you as a pastor are addressing the hearts, minds, and souls of people, policy is going to touch on that.
For sure.
The Black church in general has understood this, right? Like, how can you get in the pulpit and not talk about life under slavery? How can you lead a church and not talk about the fact that you can't ride in the front of the bus?
Mm-hmm.
How can you be a church leader and not talk about the fact that your vote is being suppressed or taken away,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's always been part of the Black experience in America and therefore the Black church experience in America. I think white people are finally feeling the sting in a way they haven't before. They're used to, even if government wasn't efficient, was flawed in general, worked for them, could count on stability, the peaceful transfer of power, all of those kinds of things. Now they're starting to say,
it's been striking how many people have come back around after they've publicly voted for the current administration, current regime, and then now are coming back and saying, "Oh, I didn't know it applied to me.
I didn't think the leopard would eat my face.
I didn't think this would. It's me.
Yeah.
I'm one of your people." Like, it's even funny seeing some of this as popular commentators hedging their bets, but even popular right-wing commentators now, or those who had supported this regime before, saying, "I don't recognize it. Looks weird to me." And it's convenient for them, but it's also very striking that now they're starting to turn and say, "Whoa, y'all are denying basic due process?" Like, what if that's us on the other end of it? That kind of seems like that's a problem.
And I want to come back to that because I want to get your take on how do we receive those people at this point. But I just want to finish that thought.
My brother, I don't know.
There's a difference between being political and partisan. I think right now we are under obligation as church leaders to address fascism, if for the mere fact that that's what our people are concerned about. This is what's worrying folks. And if you are bringing your burdens to church, hoping for some sort of word or direction spiritually, then guess what? You have to address that. But I also think it's an imperative of the gospel.
Yeah.
If we talk about justice, I mean, when you have the eyes to see, all over the Bible are words and prophetic words to the ruling authorities, to the kings, to the powers that be.
Yeah.
So it's not some woke agenda to address politics as a church leader. And that's different than being partisan. So you don't have to get up there and say, vote Republican, vote Democrat. Only the Democratic Party is getting right, or only the Republican Party is getting. That is partisanship. All of that. And I have to be honest, because in the same breath, one party, the Republican Party, has been wholly given over to this fascism. And so in a two-party system, we have a binary choice here.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to hear something like that and take it as, well, you're baptizing the Democratic Party is perfect. Nobody's doing that. What we're saying is one party is at least making nods to the rule of law and the peaceful transfer of power and the extension of the vote. The other party is very deliberately destroying all of that.
Yeah.
And we got to face that fact too. And if the church, my last point, for decades, segments of the church have been part of creating this problem. So the church needs to be part of the solution. It's white Christian nationalism is being spread throughout churches. And if other Christians don't rise up and say, that's not my religion, that's not the way of Jesus, we've surrendered the narrative to white Christian nationalism and fascist politics. And so we have a counter narrative and we have a better story to tell. We have good news, even when it comes to politics.
You especially see this in the public faith office events at the White House, and how anybody who feels as though they're at a worship gathering or worship experience, that all of a sudden God is there and all this. And do we read our Bibles? Because the prophet tells us that, thus saith the Lord, I hate your festivals and your feasts. I hate that. Same as 5, man. Like, let justice roll.
That's huge.
Like, this is not an accident here. This is not a mistake. It's not us reading the scriptures errantly. He says, I despise your festivals. I despise your feasts. You think this is what I want? This is the fast that I want? Tells Isaiah, is this the fast that I want? so that you can rub your face in front of everyone. Do justice. Like, treat your workers well, like pay people a fair wage. Like, what are we talking about here? And it's just striking because I preached on that text recently, and it was very striking because when you're in the Bible study and people are reading, they're like, wait, so you're telling me like, I'm like,
yeah. It sounds offensive. Like the Lord doesn't want your worship if your heart isn't right.
You cannot separate worship and justice.
Ooh.
They're inseparable. So don't worship him as if your hands are clean if you're not willing to love your neighbor and ensure that your neighbor is protected. You asked earlier, how do we welcome people back? Man, I don't quite know. I think I'm trying to figure out what deconstruction from, and that's why I think your Substack and your work is so important. I'm trying to figure out what deconstruction from Trumpism looks like. How do we support people on that process? How do we show up for people on that process? And so much of me wants to say that's not our work. But I know with changing and shifting demographics in so many of our churches, it is our work. We're thrust into it. Especially if people say, this is my church, this is my faith community. So like, what do you do? And I think a big part of it is we really need to teach people how to lament and repent well.
That's good.
And lament and repent consistently. What does consistent lament and repenting look like? What is lament that says, I'm grieved by what is happening in the world, but not given over into despair? I'm grieved by what's happening in my community, in my neighborhood. I was having a conversation with a teacher recently, and I asked her, I said, hey, are you concerned, local teacher, are you concerned about some of the stuff that's happened nationally? Is it going to affect our school? And she just says, we haven't heard anything specific about this program, but it's possible. We're concerned. Do you grieve and lament what's happening in your children's schools with people who need resources they're not going to be able to receive?
Yeah.
With teachers who need the opportunities they're not going to be able to get so that they can educate our children well and teach them. And everything isn't perfect. We recognize that. But cutting is not the answer.
Yeah.
I think there has to be this broad, like real deconstruction from this. And we have to give people a path and we have to be prepared for that. But I think it starts with lamenting and repenting. And if you're not able to do that, you're not going to really get down to the root of what happened. And you're not going to get down to the root of what deceived you.
Yeah.
What led you astray.
Yeah.
You got to dig down into that. And you have to unpack it and unlearn it. But I think also there's people who are doing that work. I think we need language around white Christian nationalism, which is why I'm really grateful for your work. We need language around it that gives people just handles to understand what they fell into. And I think that's when more and more people are going to pick up Color of Compromise and How to Fight Racism. And they're going to see the roots of how it arose in their own hearts.
So I would say for the people who would listen to a Pass the Mic and already be on board by and large with justice, we have to receive the folks who are just yesterday seeing the light. The reason being, on a very practical level, we need as much support as we can get.
Yeah.
And in this case, resisting fascism, whoever's not against us is with us. So we actually have to be pretty broad-minded. And
that's so tough, bro.
It is so tough, especially on quote unquote the left. There's a fundamentalist left as well, where you have to check every single box ideologically in order to be considered acceptable. Well, guess what? The people who are just deconstructing from this political ideology are not going to check probably most of the boxes, but maybe they check the most important one, which is we want to resist fascism and support democracy.
Yeah.
And that's where we start.
The circles of influence.
Yeah.
90% or 75, 50. I talk about it all the time on the podcast, but this whole concept of 90%ers arguing with other 90%ers about the 10% they disagree with each other on.
Yeah. I heard, I think it was Rachel Lazar of Americans United talk about 80% friend, 20% enemy.
Yeah.
And how we often focus on the 20% that we disagree with.
Yeah.
And forget that on the 80%, we can rock together. And honestly, it may be flipped in this political circumstance.
And that's cool too.
We may just 20%.
20% might be enough.
Right, exactly.
Like, can you just at least acknowledge this is abnormal behavior?
Yes.
And can you say we shouldn't allow someone with abnormal behavior to keep increasing and coalescing power? We shouldn't allow someone to arrest judges. Like, can we just stay there?
Deport 2-year-olds.
Like, it feels like that 20% is a pretty low bar.
You know?
Like, you can get on this train. Like,
Yeah.
it just feels so hard, I think, sometimes to think of. It's hard not to think of this, even as you're talking about communal, it's hard not to think about all of this personally. And it's hard not to think about that pain. That's why I think your community is so important, because it's hard not to personalize. I can't believe y'all would look at all this and be like, yep.
Right.
How?
Right.
And then sit next to us and worship with us and listen to the same sermons and hug us and fellowship with us.
Yeah. Some people are having a real awakening right now, a rude one. The phrase arose during the women's liberation movement that the personal is political and the political is personal. And I think people, particularly white people, are feeling that right now. But the people who are just waking up and deconstructing from this political ideology, have some humility. It's not your turn to speak up or lead. It is your turn to sit down and learn and to understand why you were sucked into this, why you missed so much of what so many other people were talking about and warning about. And to have some real circumspection, not to have a sense of, belittling yourself or downing yourself, but to really understand what went wrong so that you can get it right. On the video series, I'll say that I think the heart of it is probably episode 2. Architects of Ruin.
Architects, yeah.
This is the deep story behind fascism that most of us don't know. A lot of the content in that episode is based on Catherine Stewart's book, Money, Lies, and God. That's her latest book, New York Times bestseller. Catherine Stewart is an investigative journalist. She also wrote The Power Worshippers, and that was the book on which the documentary God and Country was based. So if you've seen God and Country, that's Catherine Stewart's work as the basis. Money, Lies, and God, I think, is required reading for this moment. One of the things that she talks about is the Claremont Institute. This is out of California, which is West Coast, supposed to be all liberal. It's a right-wing propaganda machine and think tank. What I found most interesting about Claremont Institute is they have all these fellowships. These fellowships fund right-wingers to do what they do and do more of it. So one of their Institute fellows, a guy named Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA. They have a coterie of people who are now household names in the right-wing ecosystem. And many of them got their start or got a big boost through things like that. So what the right has done incredibly, depressingly well is organize and fund.
Wow.
So whether it's a Claremont Institute, Heritage Foundation, Federalist Society, you can go down the list. Council on National
Family Research
Policy.
Council.
Family Research. You can go down the list. What they've done is funneled hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into supporting these organizations in strategic areas, whether it is appointing federal judges or even the new media ecosystem and supporting YouTubers and social media influencers. So what the right doesn't care about, the right cares about the message, not the messenger. The right will get behind a Trump, knowing good and well he's not one of them, but it's working. The message is getting out. They'll get behind a woman. They'll get behind a Black person. They'll get behind a Latino, as long as the message is getting out there. The left is very concerned about the messenger to the detriment of the message getting out in many cases, right? So what I want to reveal to folks
That's good, bro.
are the people behind the scenes. Listen, Trump is a useful idiot. He sucks all the attention out of the room. He is not the architect of this fascism that is happening right now. He's just the mouthpiece for it. And he's convenient because while the spotlight's on him, the Russell Votes of the world, who's now the head of the Office of Management and Budget. And by the way, great evangelical education. Russ Vogt went to Wheaton College. He knows
Come on, bro.
From the inside about Christianity, about right wing. He knows the Bible. And yet he's doing so many things that are anti-Jesus and proudly. And what I want the church to understand is what we see is just the tip of the iceberg. And the people who are really nefarious and pulling the strings, you could bump into them on the street and not know who they were. Say, excuse me, have a nice day. Not knowing that they are the architects of so much injustice.
Wow. That's heavy, bro.
We got our work cut out for us. This is the moment.
Yes.
If not now, then when?
When?
Even our previous racial justice uprisings, as important as they were and are, now we're seeing all of the places that our civil rights activists appealed to being destroyed. You can't count on a Supreme Court ruling when the president ignores the Supreme Court.
Yes.
You cannot count on the law being interpreted fairly when you arrest the judges that interpret the law fairly. You can't count on a law or a policy being changed when one of the two parties is wholly given over to fascism and they have a supermajority in Congress. So all of the ways that we appealed to for change and for progress, those are being co-opted and dismantled, or it's pay to play. So I've been saying for a long time, this is the civil rights movement of our generation. 2025 may be the 1963 of the present day civil rights movement. 1963, you had the 16th Street Birmingham church bombing. You had letter from Birmingham jail. You had March on Washington. You had assassination of Kennedy, on and on and on. 63 was a pivotal year in the civil rights movement as a whole in that era. Maybe this is 2025. I don't know. I'm not a prophet. But what I do know is it's pull out all the stops time. What I do know is it's time to think about your legacy. What I do know is you better have an answer right now to the question that generations from now, they'll ask you, where were you when the United States was falling into fascism? What were you doing? How did you contribute? What side were you on? We've said this before. Many people say, if I were alive in the civil rights movement, I would have marched, I would have protested,
what are you doing right now?
What you're doing right now is what you would have done then. So we need to be intentional, and we especially in the church need to be part of resisting this dismantling of democracy.
Bro, we're going to put it in the show notes, but tell people where they can go right now to get the study and to the video series. Yeah,
the video series is available for absolutely free, and there's a study guide you can download. To get the videos, easiest thing, youtube.com/@jtisby. Study guide, just subscribe to jamartisby.substack.com. I say that because that's where I put all my info. So you want one-stop shopping, that's where you'll get it. And I do encourage you, form your own local church group. Go through, the videos are 20 to 30 minutes each. Watch them on your own time. Go through the discussion questions and then decide what's the next right step. You don't have to have all the answers. Start local, start with your congregation, your community, and simply ask, what's the next right step?
We got a group at the church, man. Loading, man. You asked me, so we got a group at the church loading, man. That's why I said, let's go, bro. Let's do it.
I'll zoom in for y'all.
Yeah, we got a group at the church loading, man. So thank you for your work, bro. Thank you for being a prophet. You are a prophet. Thank you for being prophetic for such a time as this, bro.
Appreciate you.
Y'all, I hope you go and download it. Also, continue to support what we do here at Pastor Mike. If you are not already, we're on YouTube, Pastor Mike Podcast. You can support us, patreon.com/Pastor Mike. And of course, subscribe to Jemar Tisby at jamartisby.substack.com. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you soon on the next Pass the Mic.